For 35 years, Final Fantasy has dazzled us with its amazing characters and unique stories, spanning generations of gamers. Now I'm going to take a Final Fantasy content creator through a random Final Fantasy XIV dungeon, and we will discuss all things Final Fantasy. Welcome to Dungeon Run with Arrows. Welcome everyone to episode 2 of Dungeon Run with Arrows, the only Final Fantasy podcast that takes place during a run of a Final Fantasy XIV dungeon. I'm your host, Arrows, and tonight we are making our way to the Aether data center and the Cactar server to team up with Nerdturf to run a Final Fantasy XIV dungeon and find out more about your favorite Final Fantasy content creators. Alrighty, we are currently in Cactar with Nerdturf. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fine. So yourself?
I'm doing fantastic. We're episode 2, really awesome. And it's funny because you as soon as I post about this, you were like, oh man, if you ever need an astrologian, you're down. So I was like, that's crazy. And I was so nervous that this was never going to take off. But
no, I think it's a great idea. It's something that I haven't seen before, and I watched the first video of Solois, and it just seemed like a lot of fun to do.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited for it. So you actually had a dungeon that you wanted to do in the Sigma Dreamscape.
Yes, it is probably I have a lot of favorites. It's hard to put my finger on which one is my ultimate favorite dungeon, but I think just the aesthetic of the dungeon, the background music of it, the pulls, and kind of everything is just
Well, I played it. I played it when you suggested it, so I knew roughly what the boss fights were going to be like, and aesthetically it's a very, very nice dungeon. I really enjoyed my playthrough of it, so I am
it's a lot of fun.
Really excited to run it tonight.
There's a couple pulls in it that are kind of scary, but
I think so too. I think we'll be good. And so you're like an MMO veteran. I believe you were telling me when we were talking last that you've played a bunch of them.
Yeah, there are a few obscure MMOs that I haven't played. But, I probably started with RuneScape in early 2000, and from there I went to 2, and the rest is kind of down the dumps now. So. But getting into full stage has been.
I accidentally pulled that later. So is Final Fantasy XIV your first foray into the series, or are you familiar with the more JRPG variants of it as well?
With the MMO side of things, yeah. I did play it. That was actually a really long time ago, and I don't remember much of it. But other than that, I didn't play 9. I didn't play 7, which a lot of people assume that to be heresy. But that just makes it better.
Yeah. So personally, 8 is my favorite Final Fantasy of all time. I've said this numerous times, and anybody who knows me knows it's true. I think 8 tried to think outside of the box, and I think for the most part, as a game, it hit it. There are a few things that a lot of people don't like. I know a lot of people, they don't like the junction system in it, but I personally love the junction system. And I also love the fact that 8 is a Final Fantasy game that you don't overly have to grind inside ridiculously for near the end, because the game levels up with you. Yeah. Oh no, 100% agree.
Yeah, it's definitely probably by far the that ultimately Final Fantasy X is like really what started my love for RPG.
Yeah, I'm the same way with 7. On our prologue episode of this, I talked about how Final Fantasy 7 is my origin story in the JRPGs. So like I wasn't like I dabbled in them, but I wasn't like a huge fan of them until I played 7, and it definitely sparked my love, not just for like the genre, but for the series in general. From then I went on and I played the other games and fell in love with them. So, but yeah, there's definitely a huge like, oh god. But yeah, like, and I think Final Fantasy 14, like, compared to those other MMOs you played, how does 14 stack up to them?
Well, when MMOs 2 it was it was like old school if you did various things,
Yeah.
you might have
Yeah.
ultimately, I mean, like I've never really seen such a like I feel like
Oh yeah, 100%.
they kind of take their
Yeah, whatever.
that's kind of in a sense, but at the same time you can also be dangerous as well.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Oh, 100%. 100%. Yeah, and it's like I feel like it's like that with any game that you have that emotional attachment. Like, I know there are communities for that speak volumes to that Pokemon. Pokemon do that really very like toxic. Like not even like purposely toxic. But like just like when you're defending, what you love, it's very easy to cross over into that like toxicity level of it. So
I mean, I know all too well because as you know, I just started streaming.
yeah,
Originally, I wanted to stream MMOs, like
yeah, that wasn't gonna be a thing.
So I think it's like
Yeah, and then I feel like Pokemon is just I feel like Pokemon in general is just a good game to start to like stream with, because you can be, I feel like with Pokemon especially, like you can be a lot more like interactive with your chatters, right? Because you don't need to like, we're 8 generations into Pokemon. There's not really like a lot of like concentration that needs to go into like any part of that game unless you're doing PvP, right? So whereas like with MMOs, when you get like the dungeons and stuff, you really kind of need to have like a bit of focus.
Yeah, and I mean, with me, I started
The shiny. The shiny lock. I remember your shiny lock.
Yeah, which is basically like just challenge.
Literally.
So definitely, it's very chill.
Yeah.
More so than Ultimate Race.
Yeah. That's like the one thing I have never done in 14. Which I've always been worried about doing them, about like dying a lot and having like people like freak out, and like that the amount of concentration that takes too is something I don't think I would ever do while streaming. At least not right away. But now that like data center travel is a thing, I would love to like do more stuff like that with like Final Fantasy. I myself, I've been streaming a ton of Final Fantasy 14 lately, like a ton of it, and getting back into. It's crazy how different the game is, because like you started playing 14 around when Shadowbringers came out, right? Which means you weren't around. You're one of those fortunate people that got the. They have to have like travel tickets and Vesper Bay tickets, and but like I feel like even though those changes are more tailored to like newer players, really makes us feel like it's made the game feel like just like a JRPG. Which I'm gonna get that. And but like I feel like those changes are also really cool for like returning players. Like I've been doing a rerun through of A Realm Reborn, and I'm essentially playing it as a JRPG. So like I'm using the duty support for all my dungeons, so I don't have to keep up with anybody. And it's been kind of awesome. Like I'm essentially playing this MMO as a JRPG, but it's also not taking away from the MMO portion of it, because the duty support only runs for storyline duties right now. So like if I want to take that character and do I was in the wrong place for a long time. If I want to take that character and do anything with it out of that, I still have that option. But the change they made doesn't affect like this character. So I can still play with this character as like an MMO. It's like we're sitting here, we're doing this now, and you have to do dailies. It's crazy how small changes have made this game so much more accessible to everybody. Like I was talking to a streamer friend. I'm not saying that. I was talking to a streamer friend the other day about Final Fantasy 14, and they were like, I wanted to get into it, but with it being so multiplayer, I'm like, well, you can use duty support to get familiar with the dungeons before you go out and do any multiplayer aspect to it, which I think is fantastic. Like I've been using it myself to learn how to tank.
Yeah, no, honestly, the duty support thing is probably one of my favorite.
Oh, I'm dead.
It allows players to, like you said, to try it out themselves beforehand without any hands on it. New tanks, recognize the mechanics, without having to jump in there with people who've done the dungeon 500 times before, and once you've run through the dungeon in 30 seconds.
Yeah.
It definitely gives everybody the opportunity to, or just really experience it.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's crazy. Like Square Enix is like definitely doing great things with this game. Obviously, you can tell it's like making so much money, and it's so popular right now that like when a new expansion comes out, it pretty much crashes the game for a lot of us, which is crazy.
I remember those.
And like that's what I was saying to like Mrs. Arrows. I do like I was right in at like the start of Shadowbringers, and I do not remember any of those issues for Shadowbringers. Like I do not remember having any issues getting into the game at any point in the day. And then Endwalker comes along, and it's like, unless you want to play at 7 o'clock in the morning, you got like a 2 to 3 hour wait for some servers, which is crazy to think about how much the game has come along, even just in like what, the 2 years between Endwalker and Shadowbringers, give or take.
I remember 3 hours before I was supposed to play with my buddies at night, just so I would be able to do it.
Exactly.
And then
Yeah, and that was the worst. The errors were the worst. And like, I give all the credit in the world to like Yoshida and the Square Enix team. They were very transparent during all of that. Like, they handled that so well. Oh yeah. Yeah, there's a definite level of transparency. 100%.
The MMO genre has just been decade and a half. It's been so bad. So, yeah, when I finally had the opportunity to do it, I really wish I would have done this. Because it's given me back that feeling of getting into really solid.
Yeah. No, definitely. And like you said, like in the community, for the most part, it's like fantastic, which we don't really see in general now. Like, prime example is I booted up Pokemon Unite for the first time in like a month and a half last night, or the other night, and I played 2 games, and even though there wasn't any voice chat on, the amount of toxicity because the ultimate. The amount of like toxicity in that game, those 2 games I played was like, oh my God. And then to come in here where I was literally like, the early start of the game was because I didn't really know what I was doing. I would die so many times, and people were so helpful when I started. People were so helpful when I started playing the game that it kept me going through all this time. Like I said, I've been playing this game since the PS4. They came on the PS4, so good. A good like 5 or 6 years at this point, or maybe more. And I just keep coming back to it because the community is so great, and like the game just keeps me enthralled. Like I've been enthralled with this story for like so long. It's crazy, we were talking about like doing alternate raids and being distracted. And when I ran through this dungeon on my own, I did this dungeon perfectly. Barely took any damage, didn't get caught by anything. When you're just sitting and playing, why am I getting this? Sitting and like going through and playing it like on my own, I like didn't get any of this stuff, and like going through now where you're like your attention is slightly not 100% on the gameplay, and you need to make those mistakes. And I notice that a lot when I'm streaming, like when I'm doing grinding on my own, and then when I stream it, it's like, man, I suck. Yeah. Yeah.
Whereas 14
Yeah. Yeah. I was definitely out of the way there. Sadly. I was 100% out of there. Probably not, but for the purpose of trying to save face. This is a paladin, so they... Yeah. So, out of all the characters so far in Final Fantasy XIV, who is your favorite NPC character? No! Oh my god. That one I was all me. I was very much out of it. Yes, such a tragic story.
There's just so much, as a father. It just kind of kills me inside.
Yeah.
Just feels so well.
I mean, the paladin still might be able to do it. Oh no.
But yeah, like, I feel like a lot of people choose like
this. MSL has a very, very weird fan base online.
It's got 6 bolt on there.
Yeah.
I feel like she was definitely
Yeah, no, I agree, and like that, like I said, even though I don't feel like Endwalker had as much of like a even though I feel like Endwalker like didn't have like the impact on me at the end as like a Shadowbringers did, you cannot deny that the game is the playing through the story had such a huge effect
definitely
on me, but it was one of the things where like I feel like the ending, I don't want to say it felt rushed, but I feel like the ending was like, what's the word I'm looking for? Okay.
my thinking was I would
Take
have
the
hoped
screenshot for the title.
I would have hoped that Endwalker was a bit more emotionally impactful. Not to say that it wasn't, because, like I said, Meteon's
Yeah.
Meteon's story basically broke me. But just the call it, without spoiling, the safe thinking, I guess.
Yeah.
You know, I feel like they could have explored a little bit more in that.
I definitely agree. And it's funny you talked about being a father yourself in the Medion story. It's crazy. Like I take I find I relate to like the Final Fantasy games in general, because I feel like there's always something that any player there's always something in the game that any player can like relate to, and then it makes you more invested in that story.
Definitely.
Like,
yeah, and that's one of the reasons why I love MMOs so much. It's MMORPG, role-playing games. You are effectively playing a role of your character.
yeah.
So, you're kind of putting yourself in these games and kind of playing these games as if you were the character.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's the biggest reason of why I love MMOs so much.
No, I agree. Like, I've only dabbled in MMOs here and there. Final Fantasy is like my first like full-on immersion into the genre, and I want to like. There's always been a part of me that's wanted to go back and play 11, because I didn't really have access to like internet or a computer when 11 came out, so it's something that I've like. But I still hear people speak so fondly of 11 today. Definitely. That I've always wanted to go and check it out, but like I think like 14 will always be like my go-to. And going back, I always find I compare other MMOs to 14 because I've played it first, and it's like, well, 14. I feel like 14 does this better than this, and I feel like 14 for this, and so. But I definitely do want to go in and like try more. Sorry, I have a cat bombarding me. And
it's not me, right?
Yeah. So I'm just really like, but like I've fallen so in love with this game, and now going through and replaying it as like a JRPG, I'm re-falling in love with this game, which is like crazy that even now, like 8 to 10 years, like 7 to 10 years later, for me playing it, I'm still as addicted to this game as I was when I first started playing it, when I first bought my PS4.
100%.
So.
And, actually, where did that go? So my /play time is 53 days, 2 hours and 29 minutes, and I still haven't really scratched the surface of this game.
Yeah, exactly.
There's just so much content in the game that, I've done a lot of things. I've done extreme trials. I've done raids. I've done a bunch of different things, but there's still so much that I haven't done. I still want to go back to Eureka. I need to finish Vazja.
Yeah.
There's just all these little like side things that if you're not looking really, you'll miss.
Yeah, 100%, 100%.
Of like 20 plus hours of gameplay.
Like I just started doing the Hildebrand missions with this character, and I didn't even realize that there was another Gilgamesh fight in this game, and I was like, oh my god, I'm fighting Gilgamesh again, and he's got like his 6 arms, and it's crazy.
And again, that's another thing that I love about MMOs. You pay, you might pay like a $15 a month sub fee, but if you're playing other AAA games, like if you go out and buy the new Call of Duty.
Yeah.
Call of Duty might be a bad example because it has a lot of multiplayer.
Yeah, but I find, and this might get me canceled. I find my personal, like I like first person shooters, but I find I can't play Call of Duty consistently. I find I never feel like I get my $79.99 or whatever price tag out of Call of Duty.
Yeah, I mean, I used to play them all the time in high school. My high school was EverQuest 2 and Call of Duty 4.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think just with, I guess just with time, I kind of just gravitated more towards MMO because I loved that community aspect. Like, that was the biggest thing for me. Logging in, seeing your friends, and jamming things together with your friends.
Yeah.
More so than team deathmatch or search and destroy or something. So yeah, that's definitely what's kind of solidified me just having such a love for MMOs.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a blast. It's yeah, I'm really looking forward to 7.0 when 7.0 drops and they start adding these graphical reworks.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be doing the whole game storyline again.
Like, and like 7.0, like, where do you go with this game after Endwalker? It's like,
Oh, did you not hear Emmett Selk? He
yeah,
gave us
he
some
he
hints.
gave us a bunch of places, but like how do you make this game bigger than what Endwalker was? Because like Endwalker ended like 10 years of story, and like how do you like expand upon that now? It's like, where does the Warrior of Light go from here? I'm really excited for it too.
You know, I have faith in the writers.
Oh, 100%, 100%.
You know, even the side quests in this game
Yeah.
are worth, you know, going through.
Yeah, definitely. I always save them for when I want to make a new character class, and then that's how I get my levels. Before I can do dungeons, I just do the heck out of side quests.
Yeah.
So, but thank you for coming out and
My pleasure.
hanging out with us tonight. I died quite a bit on the dungeon, but it's okay. It's okay. Not every dungeon run we do is going to be perfect. It's all good.
Yeah,
It's all good.
It definitely gave me some work, but
It's all good. So, where can we find you on social media?
You can find me on Twitch at Nerdturf. I do. Right now, I'm doing a lot of RuneScape, and I'm actually going to be adding more Final Fantasy 14 as well.
Awesome.
And then on Twitter, you can find me at Nerdturf underscore. Is that the proper thing? I think it is.
Yeah.
Nerdturf underscore TV. And then pretty much everywhere else is just Nerdturf. YouTube is Nerdturf, and all that jazz.
Alrighty.
But yeah, I mean, if you're ever in Aether, Caxar, and you need an astrologian, just let me know.
There you go. There you go. Well, thank you for recording this with me, and
Yeah, my pleasure.
definitely looking forward to running some more dungeons with you now that we can do that really easily.
Absolutely.
And
I need to work on my tanks.
there you go. And have yourself a great night.
You too.
Alrighty.